Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode on TMJ's Political Current podcast. There's a lot to unpack and analyze in the West Asia region currently. From Israel's recent attack on Iran and talks about nuclear enrichment, to the Lebanese resistance and potential talks about disarmament, to Syria and its normalization efforts with Israel, and the Persian Gulf states and the potential for the expansion of the Abraham Accords. Today I am joined by Marwa Osman, who is a university lecturer and a journalist and TV show host based in Lebanon. And she's going to join me in breaking down lots of what we're seeing come out from the region, as well as the bigger picture connection between these different events. Thank you again, Marwa, for joining us on this episode of TMJ News. I want to actually start off with a more personal note, which I think is something that would really set the stage for the conversation we're having. And that is, you as a journalist, you are reporting from places where there's an active war. And sometimes that might mean even putting your own life in danger for bringing, the truth to people. And we've seen examples of this recently. The most recent was, the direct attack on Iranian state TV that Israel did, where we had Sahar Imami, the Iranian journalist, who was reporting live despite knowing that their building was going to be targeted. And this is something that we've seen, for example, with journalists in Gaza as well, where they are targeted, many killed, Lebanon as well. So this is a kind of a theme that we've seen with a lot of journalists who are reporting from that region and still deciding to do so despite knowing the dangers that face them. For yourself, being a journalist who's been doing this for so long in the region, how does it feel reporting at this time in specific?
Thank you, Sarah, for giving me the time to take part in your platform. And I want to thank you for all the effort that you're putting and exerting to let the truth be out there for the people to realize, because it's a war on narratives, not only war on people. It is what it is. It's like, I don't like to play the victim card, because that's not who we are. We are dignified in what we do, and we do it with passion, and we do it with utmost respect to our colleagues as well, who put their lives on the line, especially those who are war correspondents. I've personally never been a war correspondent, but I do record and go live with my show in specific areas in Dahye, which is the suburbs of Beirut, which are usually targeted every time that Zionist Israel wants to attack Lebanon. So it was a bit of a risk, yes, because Zionist Israel was issuing a lot of threats, direct threats with maps. As you may know, in Lebanon, it's a bit different of how they plan their attacks and implement them. They issue certain maps similar to a Google map, but they colorize the area that they want to bomb with red. But what happened is they started targeting people. If you remember, during the war, they even started targeting areas where specifically Al-Manar channel, because Al-Manar completely left their buildings, which is a Lebanese broadcast company, and they were going live from a road, a highway in Lebanon. No one would even rent them a place because people were afraid that even if they rent them a place, that place would be targeted. And Al-Manar knew that, and the people knew that it was a very complicated situation, but they understood that, and they decided, well, the road is owned by no one, we'll just be stationed here. They did, and they were still attacked and targeted by Zionist Israel. So even when we changed our location, it was always a risk, but a risk that we are ready to take, Mina. So to look, when you are living through massacres, we were born into massacres in this country. I mean, Israel has been conducting all sorts of human rights violations in Lebanon, massacres, even genocide at some point when they attacked and killed more than 3,000 people in 1982 in the Sabra and Shatila massacre. So they have been, the genocide against the Palestinian people and the Lebanese people by default has been happening ever since this cancerous entity has been implanted in our region. So it is in our collective cultural conscious. It's a part of our cultural, if you will, generational it's the air that we get from our ancestors. That's what we get from them, is to know how to deal with situations like this. And in Lebanon, having gone through the 2006 war, when I was just only attempting to start my college years. I was just 18 years old. I didn't have any experience in anything that has to do with journalism. And as a matter of fact, I was studying something completely far away from journalism. I switched when I became a master's degree. So from then, when we understood in such a young age, when we understood how the Zionist entity operates and how it does not really respect any sort of law, especially the law that protects journalists during times of war. When the 2025 September war kicked in, the full-fledged war kicked in, when it became very risky to be anywhere in Lebanon because people were getting targeted in the north, just like they were getting targeted in the south. It became more of I don't want to say a mission, it became a lifestyle. So people put their lives on the line every day, every minute of every day in places like Lebanon or Palestine or Iran or Iraq or even at some point Syria as well. So it becomes a routine. It becomes this is reality. We are moving forward. We're not going to stop. They're not going to intimidate us in any way possible, even if it means us paying the price with our lives. We have youngsters who are the most honorable humans on the face of the planet who are defending our land. And we want to be saying that it's risky, we want to do it? No. The least that we could do is be their voices to the people, especially when it's in English, when we're trying to tell the viewers in the English-speaking world or the world at a larger level that what is happening not only should not happen, it should be completely condemned, and people who are responsible of getting those bombs to the Israeli entity to begin with should also be held responsible. So
absolutely. And you mentioned Lebanon, since you're as well a Lebanese journalist. One thing that has been recently in the news is this, the Abraham Accords, and how it's, seeking expansion. And one country that has also been in that conversation recently has been Lebanon, knowing that the government in Lebanon does have pro-Western, leanings, but at the same time, there's also the presence of the Lebanese resistance that stands as a direct kind of barrier to a lot of this happening, especially in the topic of disarming the resistance. And this is something that there had been a lot of, debate on whether it would happen, whether it would not, but something we know coming out from the Lebanese resistance officials themselves is that that will not be happening. So as someone who's reporting from there, you're seeing all of these different conversations happen. How do you see the future of the Lebanese resistance in terms of disarming, especially in the broader context of these accords and what they're seeking to accomplish?
It has always amazed me, Sarah, that the dialogue that is conducted on a regional or international level has absolutely nothing to do with what's happening in Lebanon. This has always been, it's a bit funny for me, but at the end of the day, it tells a lot. The confusion that people have because they don't understand how the government is pro-American, but the people are not. How is that possible? It's possible because of the system of governance in Lebanon, and we need like 2 episodes to just explain that on its own, because it's a manifestation of a result of the civil war that happened in Lebanon for 15 years between 1975 and 1990. So it's a long process of how the constitution of Lebanon was built, and how aside from the constitution, there are certain traditions, political traditions in Lebanon that are abided. There's no written rule for it. For example, like the president has to be a Maronite. It doesn't. It's not a written rule. On the contrary, in the Ta'if Accord, the accord that was signed after the civil war, it says that the presidency should be actually taken by different sects in Lebanon, not only by the Maronite sect, but by tradition, it became that the president is a Maronite, the speaker is a Shia, and the prime minister is a Sunni. So when we say this, we're saying this in a country that has actually 18 different sects, not 3, 18 different sects in Lebanon. And all of these sects are in one way or another represented in the parliament in Lebanon. Now, how did they get there? It has to do with the weighted, we call them the weighted electoral process. Just like in the United States, there are certain states that have lower number of population, but high weights in how they affect the elections. Lebanon has a similar system with how weights affect the electoral process in Lebanon. For example, if you take it by numbers, Hezbollah members of parliament have gained by electoral votes 500,000 votes each. We're talking about a country that has 6 million Lebanese nationals, okay?
Right.
So 6,500,000, if we have only 60% of people participating in the elections, from those 60% of the 6 million, 500,000 are electing Hezbollah. If you put that in a democratic, full map democratic electoral process, Hezbollah would assign the president, the speaker, and the prime minister. Hezbollah owns the regime, if we put it in that sense. But it is being played in another sense of weighted electoral votes, so everyone would be represented. So when we say the government is American-oriented, or sometimes they issue certain statements that actually align with the Zionist entity, it's because the people there are literally handpicked and placed in their positions to just parrot what the United States of America want.
Right.
If a peace process is to be signed between two states, entities, call them whatever you want, after decades of war, shouldn't there be a referendum for the people to choose what kind of a relationship they want with this enemy? They wouldn't dare allow a referendum in Lebanon. You know the result. I know the result. The people have spoken. Despite the animosity that you read about in foreign mainstream media, during the war, the Lebanese people, in the toughest times, they proved to themselves first and to their fellow Lebanese citizen and to the world that they are one. When the Shia population of Lebanon had to flee the areas because of the constant massacres committed by Zionist Israel, where did they have to go? They needed to go to areas where they knew it was somewhat safe, which are areas inhabited by Druze, by Christians from all sects, by Sunnis, and people opened their hamses, Sarah, for people they don't know, but they share the same ID with them, the same Lebanese identity with them. That was one of the biggest tests, even much bigger than 2006, because it was on a very large scale in Lebanon. And at a time when we had lost a very important political figure in Lebanon that usually handles the balance of politics in the country, that makes sure it doesn't explode and goes out of proportion. Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was assassinated by then. Was one of the biggest tests for us as citizens of this country, and we passed with flying colors. Just to tell you that in the darkest times, even if someone doesn't agree with my politics, they will open their house for me to protect me, and I will for sure not only do the same, it will be my duty, and I will be a low-life maggot if I don't reciprocate, God forbid, if something happens to them. Politics has been shrunken into a point of animosity that does not really threaten the civil society in Lebanon, which is great news. But at the same time, we don't have trust in the Americans. We don't have trust in the Israelis. They will always try to sow some sort of a discord between the different sects and different communities in Lebanon. We have to keep a wide open eye for what might happen next. But for the time being, rest assured, and everyone should be sure, normalization will never take place in Lebanon. We have paid a lot of blood. We have given the best of our community.
As you mentioned as well, with the Lebanese people who were united, war, especially from an external entity, always unites people, which is also scenes that we saw from Iran. I was speaking to Professor Marandi recently, and he mentioned he hasn't seen the Iranian people united like this for over 30 years. And that makes sense, because when you have an external entity now threatening the very existence of your people, as you said, you're going to open your doors to people. You're going to make sure your neighbor has food before yourself. You're going to make sure they have a place to sleep before your own family. And this is a reality we're seeing coming out from, especially these countries that have stood against Israeli aggression in the region. What we saw with Israel's attack on Iran was something many people thought was impossible before. And I think before the international eyes, especially from Americans, being here, we're also seeing Americans who are saying this was something we never expected to see from Iran, because our media for so long has portrayed countries like Iran, Lebanon, and others as incapable of standing on their own feet and responding to aggression against, from countries that we have been so long taught are invincible. So seeing everything that unfolded there, what are your predictions for how Iran's response as well as Lebanon right now and Yemen. How do you think for now that is changing the international perception of these countries' roles in the region? How do you think that has shifted, especially within the past few months?
Let us begin by talking about how the Western public perceives the powers in the region, or the regional powers in West Asia. I'll tell you something. I can assure you that a vast majority of the American public have no idea that in 2020, Iran retaliated against one of the biggest military bases in what they call the Middle East, in Iraq. It's called the Ain al-Assad Air Base, after Trump assassinated Haj Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Al-Quds Force Brigades in the IRGC, in the Islamic Republic's Revolution Guard Corps. They don't know, they have no idea that Iran had already, that it was aggressed upon and it retaliated. But this one, because it was against Israel, it was a big war, it was Israel attacking, and seemingly without the approval of the Americans, because this is the black hole that the American media sent itself into. Because weeks of talking about politics between the Trump administration and the Iranian government taking place in Oman, they were all signaling that an agreement is underway. So the whole world was waiting for that agreement. Now, after the attack, we understood that this was a maneuver by Trump to just give out an illusion of talks, just to make sure that Israel is preparing well for the attack. And it backfired back home in the United States of America, when the people said, you said that the talks were going great. What happened? How dare you? Why are you dragging us? So it backfired. That's number one. Number two, how do I see the forces on the ground? I was not surprised by the Iranian retaliation, because I've seen it before. I've lived through it before. I understand people who are surprised by it, because the mainstream media has always covered up what the reality on the ground is. The same way they have covered up the reality in Afghanistan, and everyone was like surprised when the Americans were fleeing under the fire of Taliban in Afghanistan, or in Iraq, despite the fact that they have multiple military bases in Iraq. During the very few months of the Al-Aqsa flood, the Iraqi resistance was pounding those bases. So what kind of political or military success do they think is happening to the Americans, who are usually looked upon as occupation forces in our land? I mean, they still have not perceived, the public in America has not perceived the notion of occupation well. I don't know what makes them believe that they have the right to occupy swaths of land in other countries and call them our military. But what military bases? This is, you're occupying the land. Least that what the people of the land would do is retaliate, is resist you. So when it comes to the capabilities of Iran, I was not surprised. I was surprised by the capabilities of Yemen, because they played a very important card, which apparently and obviously they could have played to save their own selves during the war from 2015 up until now, despite the fact that on the battlefield it stopped, the war between Saudi Arabia and Yemen, or the Persian Gulf states and Yemen. But the besiegement is still there, the sanctions are still there, the people are still very much on a daily basis struggling to feed their families. But I was amazed by the decision that they took to support Palestine through the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb card. That was a big surprise for many people, and obviously for the Americans, who tried to suppress the Yemenis, ended up towing their battleships away from the Red Sea, which is, for me, it's such an honor to be watching people who commit to their word, to their Islam, to their brotherhood, and stand up for against the Zionism and against imperialism, and actually do what they promised. Unlike Julani, who promised to liberate Palestine and now sitting on the same desk with Netanyahu preparing for peace talks with Syria. I would never in a million years believe that Zionist Israel has dropped the issue of aggression against Iran. They're regrouping, they're rearming. That's what we saw with our own eyes. You can watch the maps of military planes landing in Zionist Israel on day one of the ceasefire. That, by the way, there is no ceasefire. By the way, there is no agreement signed by any side. It's just a word said by Trump. Trump said, "Okay, stop killing. Please stop throwing missiles on Israel." Since that day,
you think, given the regrouping that's happening, that
in Zionist Israel, definitely,
yeah.
this what we saw was just phase one. Despite the fact that Zionist Israel had a huge blow, it was the first time in its entire existence that it experienced this kind of destruction and retaliation from a state, a full state. I mean, look at the sizes. Iran won in geography and in strategy because they were pushing the Israelis to the limit while keeping their technology, their newest technology at hand, not using it yet. That was a very smart move. And they were targeting, the precision of the targets were something for Israel that are nightmarish. They have never experienced this before. They experienced this with a very tiny level in North Palestine from the missiles of the Lebanese resistance when it struck, for example, Meron air base with a high level of precision. We were actually watching a missile landing within we were watching it. We were flying with the missile, watching it where it was landing. So they did experience this, but in military bases, but it was the first time that they experienced it in intelligence bases, in ports, and in their military institutions like the Weizmann Institution, and in their infrastructure, the electricity and the electricity grid and whatnot. Everything that Zionist Israel was targeting, Iran was reciprocating. It was retaliating in the same sense. And when they decided to up the ante and threaten to target economic places in Iran had said, we will obliterate your ports and your airports. And that's why you didn't see Israel attacking, because they saw what the Iranian missiles can actually do. Added to that, what happened within the Israeli Zionist society, you know that every day, with every missile that was landing, Iranian missile, on an average, 4,000 claims were issued to the Zionist government for repairment or reconstruction.
Wow.
More than 18,000 Zionists had to completely relocate from Tel Aviv. El Al Airlines, according to Reuters, received during those 12 days of war 25,000 requests to fly out, but nothing was working at the time. That's why we saw ships carrying the Zionists with very high price tag to move them to Cyprus, where they are now buying land and houses. Be careful, Cypriots' occupation is next.
And one other aspect to this regional chessboard, if you will, are the Persian Gulf states. And you kind of mentioned them in passing, but I think one question that arises, and this was kind of displayed for everyone to see, is that they are cooperating and directly aiding Israel in its aggression in the region. And this is something that many people saw very clearly with Israel's recent attack. And U.S. policymakers are now basically trying to expand the Accords framework as essentially the backbone of this new regional order that they're after, this regional security arrangement. And it seeks to kind of unite Israel, the Gulf states, and even other regional partners under American oversight to pretty much deter future aggression from a lot of these countries in the axis of resistance, Iran being one of the main ones. As someone who was living in Lebanon and seeing all of this unfold, especially with a lot of Gulf states saying in word that we support Palestinians, and many of them even were condemning the attack on Iran. But when you look at the practical kind of realities that are unfolding on the ground, they're offering their airspaces for Israel. They're helping with refueling. Obviously, you have American military bases there. So much that is in contradiction with, their words and their actions. How do you see these countries performing when it comes to joining the Accords? And what do you think that says about them, especially in terms of the strategic goals that they have with America and Israel moving forward?
I think strategic about it is a employer-employee based relationship. I mean, it's not surprising at all, because these regimes that were made up in the late 60s, early 70s are regimes that are imposed by the Brits and the Americans in the region to be their own local, I don't want to denigrate anyone, let's just say employees in that area, with a free tap for oil, any kind of oil at any price that they wish, which is, by the way, the people, the Arabian Peninsula's people's oil. It's not the oil of the regimes. So that's direct theft of the sources of the people. But nonetheless, when it comes to policies, they don't have a choice. It's like your question tends to maybe indicate that they might have an option or choose. No, they don't have an option. They don't have a choice. A lot of people in the West were surprised, for example, by the Jordanian king and the government that intercepted Iranian missiles hitting Israel, which has been conducting a genocide over the past 20 months against the Palestinians. They were like, why are they? What do you mean, why? This is their job. Their job is to protect Zionist Israel. Their job is to protect the American interests in West Asia. That's their job. They're executing and they execute it beautifully, according to the Americans, amazingly, with trillions of dollars being basically given to the Americans. Just please keep us in power. We can give you 10 times worth what we just gave you. Plane, the biggest plane. Money, the biggest bag of money. What do you need? Just keep us in power. They are, after what they saw, especially after what they saw with the 12th Day War, they are beyond terrified of what might come next if their people rise against them. People were saying it was some sort of a role play between the Americans and the Iranians, by the Iranians telling the Americans that we are going to bomb you in Qatar. No. They actually told the Qataris. They didn't tell the Americans. They told the Qataris, who actually shut down their airspace 4 hours before the Iranian attack on Qatar. Don't you think that they would have begged the Iranians? I'm pretty sure they did beg not to attack Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. But the Iranians were issuing a message not only to the Americans that your entire billions and billions of dollars worth of military bases in the region are under our missiles. They were telling the entire Persian Gulf Arab states that we don't care that you house them and you say that you are with us and you want to stop the war. We don't care for what you're saying. We hear you. We support you. Thank you for your statement. But this has nothing to do with what's going on the battlefield. On the battlefield, the airport or the naval base that's going to attack me, I'm going to attack back. It doesn't matter if it's in Bahrain, if it's in the heart of Riyadh, or it's in the heart of Doha. It doesn't matter. This was a big message. That's why just yesterday there was a meeting between Arabchi and Mohammed bin Salman, and he is saying we are ready to commit with Iran on all strategic levels. You don't say. Wallah.
Yes, and so when I say it's all in words, it's almost as if, and we've seen this from Saudi Arabia, by the way, very frequently. At first, they're like, we are fully behind Palestine and their right to existence and their right to their country, whether it's with Palestine or Iran. We've seen this very frequently from whether it's Saudi or a lot of these other Persian Gulf states, which is very interesting because, you also say they don't have a choice. I think there's always a choice. It's a choice that for them, they can't make. They aren't able to make.
Which is why it's a choice for the people to make on their behalf. For the right choice to be taken, it has to be taken from the bottom up, not the other way around. And this is why Lebanon, it's such a complicated issue for people to understand, because the actual option is in the hands of the people, because the people are the resistance. We've tried explaining to the Western public what a resistance is. They still defy all logic and don't want to understand it. They think it is some sort of a PUBG game or a Ninja Turtle thingy that they come just flying from this. No, the teacher and the carpenter and the electrician and the engineer and the doctor, they are all part of the resistance. This is why at the beginning of the war, Zionist Israel assassinated at least 14 of our top-notch scientists in Lebanon that the world did not speak about. Scientists with PhDs in physics and in chemistry and in biology, because those are the real threats, because those are the minds that actually allow us to home grow our own capabilities in Lebanon. The same way that they attacked Iran. Why aren't the people asking, why did they kill scientists? Are they killing Oppenheimer? Is this a scientist that made the bomb? No, these are scientists that teach in universities. They no longer work in the facilities. That's why there are civilians living killed with their own families in their homes, because now they are just instructors, tutors in universities, giving out their know-how, their expertise to the new generation, to the hundreds of thousands of young men and women in Iran. Same way in Lebanon, same way in Yemen. So when you say that this is the people are the resistance, it's still unfathomable to the Western public, and it's seemingly to the Western politicians as well, because they keep saying Netanyahu yesterday before he left Washington, he was saying Hezbollah is no more. If Hezbollah is no more, why do I right now hear your drone over my head? If it's no more, then why are you afraid? What are you afraid of? And after the genocide that happened and the complicity of the world and the silence of the international community and international law, Zionist Israel found itself capable of doing whatever it wants. But they never anticipated such a retaliation from Iran, for example, or such a commitment from Yemen, for example, of such capabilities to be rebuilt in such a fast time in Lebanon, for example. So they are on a trial and error phase, but so is our resistance as well.
Absolutely. And one point that you mentioned that I want to kind of defend a little bit from the people living in Western countries, especially, Americans, Europeans, people who have for a very long time been victims of propaganda in the media that has been fed to them. A lot of them are now waking up to this idea that, wait a second, our media here is very selective with its use of labels. And one very recent example we saw is, for the longest time, HTS was on the foreign terrorist organization list in the United States. And very conveniently now it's been removed. So they're seeing these.
And Francesca Albanese replaced it.
And this is the reality they have been seeing for very long, especially in the past year and a half, where the genocide in Gaza has been essentially live streamed to their phones. And they're seeing live what's happening on the ground and asking themselves, where if my media has been telling me for so long that it's wrong to even think that a people who are facing these conditions are not allowed whatsoever to rise up and protect their land, it's almost become, a huge moral dilemma in their mind. And a lot of them have actually woken up, which is why we're seeing, mass protests here. We're seeing a lot of people, standing up and really challenging their own media and government narratives, everything from the taxes that are being sent and the money that's being sent from their taxpayer dollars to Israeli military, to the way in which their media is brainwashing them. So I do think there is.
I hear you. I understand your point of view. And I've been several times, people have indicated that I'm a bit harsh in labeling complicity on the people. No, it's not harsh. I understand your point of view, but I think it was a post this morning or last night. I lost track of time a bit. What I said, I retweeted a photo of half a kid from Gaza, and his father. It was a video, and his father crying over him because he just has the torso and the head of his son. And I retweeted that, and I said, shame on every one of you, because you are all complicit, because you allow your governments to continue to support Israel. Least that you could do is protest until you change that. You don't say, okay, we woke up. Okay, we know now. Okay, what can I do with this kind of acceptance? Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, you woke up. Okay, what will you do about it? How can you stop it? Okay? Because our people are dying to stop the direct aggression. What are you going to do, or how are you going to put your efforts together to stop your governments that are taking your tax money to kill me? Do something about it. I might seem come a bit harsh on this, but please understand my point of view, that I do this because the last thing that I want to see in my life is one of my kids with a torso and head without legs. That's why I'm that harsh. I'm that harsh because up until now, if a motorcycle passes in the streets, which is 500 meters away from my apartment, my kids are jumping in their seats because of the trauma that they received during that war. And still, I'm very thankful that it's only that, because look what's happening in Palestine. Kids who were born into genocide, killed in genocide, and lost their entire families in genocides, and families that have lost their own kids in the most harsh way. How would you imagine looking out a window, seeing your kid, half of your kid hanging on a wire outside? Yeah, I mean, what we are seeing is unimaginable. So when I tend to talk, I don't ask for anybody's forgiveness or for anybody to understand. I say this. I say what I say because I'm protecting my family.
Absolutely. And one other point that, to your point, one reality, unfortunately, that exists with those of us who are living on this side of the world and those who are living on, the West and the East, essentially, is Western audiences, unfortunately, have a very, very low tolerance for discomfort. We've been taught for so long, and our media has told us that we are, that superior group, that we should enjoy every right on the face of earth. But when those same human rights are being violated on the other side of the world, it's almost as if, oh, but I don't live there. That is a problem that they have as, third world countries.
Media. And we call it, or it's called, one of the theories of media communications, it's called the narcotizing dysfunction. It is the act of becoming numb because of all the things that you have been taught in a way that brainwashes you to a point that you are numb towards the atrocities committed by your people and by your government against people who live just very far away. I don't need to see that. It's fine. If I'm not seeing it, it's not happening. So that's narcotizing dysfunction. But I hope that with the new technology that is being used against us, that we can at some point just penetrate and use a bit of it to allow our narrative, which is the truth. That's our narrative, the truth of what's really going on in our region, to cross over and the people to hear about it. And that's thanks to people like you. And I hope that people subscribe more to your channel so they can listen and hear and see with their own eyes what is really happening and what the media is not allowing them to understand and see.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Marwa, for joining me on this episode. I really appreciate your insightful analysis on the situation, and we look forward to having you again soon.
Thank you.
If you like what you see here at TMJ News, please like and share and subscribe to our channel for more weekly content. TMJ News is an independent grassroots media outlet, and you can find ways to support us by reading the caption below. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and we look forward to seeing you on next ones.